Bad Medicine by Robert Sheckley. On May 2nd, 2103, Elwood Caswell walked rapidly down Broadway with a loaded revolver hidden in his coat pocket. He didn't want to use the weapon, but he feared he might anyhow. This was a justifiable assumption, for Caswell was a homicidal maniac. It was a gentle, misty spring day, and the air held the smell of rain and blossoming dogwood. Caswell gripped the revolver in his sweaty right hand and tried to think of a single valid reason why he should not kill a man named Magnuson, who the other day had commented on how well Caswell looked. What business was it of Magnuson's how he looked, damn busybodies, how he's spoiling things for everybody? Caswell was a choleric little man with fierce red eyes, bulldog jowls, and ginger red hair. He was the sort you would expect to find perched on a detergent box, orating to a crowd of lunching businessmen and amused students, shouting, "Mars for the Martians! Venus for the Venusians!" But in truth, Caswell was uninterested in the deplorable social conditions of extraterrestrials. He was a jet bus conductor for the New York Rapid Transit Corporation. He minded his own business, and he was quite mad. Fortunately, he knew this at least part of the time, with at least half of his mind. Perspiring freely, Caswell continued down Broadway toward the 43rd Street branch of Home Therapy Appliances Incorporated. His friend Magnuson would be finishing work soon, returning to his little apartment less than a block from Caswell's. How easy it would be, how pleasant to saunter in, exchange a few words, and... No! Caswell took a deep gulp of air and reminded himself that he didn't really want to kill anyone. It was not right to kill people. The authorities would lock him up. His friends wouldn't understand. His mother would never have approved. But these arguments seemed pallid, over-intellectual, and entirely without force. The simple fact remained: he wanted to kill Magnuson. Could so strong a desire be wrong, or even unhealthy? Yes, it could. With an agonized groan, Caswell sprinted the last few steps into the Home Therapy Appliances store. Just being within such a place gave him an immediate sense of relief. The lighting was discreet, the draperies were neutral, the displays of glittering therapy machines were neither too bland nor obstreperous. It was the kind of place where a man could happily lie down on the carpet in the shadow of the therapy machines, secure in the knowledge that help for any sort of trouble was at hand. A clerk with fair hair and long supercilious nose glided up softly, but not too softly, and murmured, "May one help?" "Therapy," said Caswell. "Of course, sir," the clerk answered, smoothing his lapels and smiling winningly. "That is what we are here for." He gave Caswell a searching look, performed an instant mental diagnosis, and tapped a gleaming white and copper machine. "Now this," the clerk said, "is the new alcoholic reliever built by IBM and advertised in the leading magazines. A handsome piece of furniture, I think you will agree, and not out of place in any home. It opens into a television set." With a flick of his narrow wrist, the clerk opened the alcoholic reliever, revealing a 52-inch screen. "I need," Caswell began. "Therapy," the clerk finished for him. "Of course. I just want to point out that this model need never cause embarrassment for yourself, your friends, or loved ones. Notice, if you will, the recessed dial which controls the desired degree of drinking. See, if you do not wish total abstinence, you can set it to heavy, moderate, social, or light. This is a new feature, unique in mechanotherapy." "I'm not an alcoholic," Caswell said with considerable dignity. "The New York Rapid Transit Corporation does not hire alcoholics." "Oh," said the clerk, glancing distrustfully at Caswell's bloodshot eyes. "You seem a little nervous. Perhaps the portable Bendix anxiety reducer." "Anxiety's not my ticket either. What have you got for homicidal mania?" The clerk pursed his lips. "Schizophrenic or manic-depressive origins?" "I don't know," Caswell admitted, somewhat taken aback. "It really doesn't matter," the clerk told him. "Just a private theory of my own. From my experience in the store, redheads and blondes are prone to schizophrenia, while brunettes incline toward the manic-depressive." "That's interesting. Have you worked here long?" "A week. Now then, here is just what you need, sir." He put his hand affectionately on a squat black machine with chrome trim. "What's that?" "That, sir, is the Rex Regenerator, built by General Motors. Isn't it handsome? It can go with any decor and opens up into a well-stocked bar. Your friends, family, loved ones need never know." "Will it cure a homicidal urge?" Caswell asked. "A strong one." "Absolutely. Don't confuse this with the little 10-amp neurosis models. This is a hefty, heavy-duty 25-amp machine for a really deep-rooted major condition." "That's what I've got," said Caswell, with pardonable pride. "This baby'll jolt it out of you. Big, heavy-duty thrust bearings, oversized heat absorbers, completely insulated, sensitivity range of over—" "I'll take it," Caswell said. "Right now. I'll pay cash." "Fine. I'll just telephone storage, and—" "This one'll do," Caswell said, pulling out his billfold. "I'm in a hurry to use it. I want to kill my friend Magnuson, you know." The clerk clucked sympathetically. "You wouldn't want to do that. Plus 5% sales tax. Thank you, sir. Full instructions are inside." Caswell thanked him, lifted the regenerator in both arms, and hurried out. After figuring his commission, the clerk smiled to himself and lighted a cigarette. His enjoyment was spoiled when the manager, a large man impressively equipped with pince-nez, marched out of his office. "Haskins," the manager said, "I thought I asked you to rid yourself of that filthy habit." "Yes, Mr. Follansby. Sorry, sir," Haskins apologized, snubbing out the cigarette. "I'll use the display denicotinizer at once." "Made a rather good sale, Mr. Follansby. One of the big Rex regenerators." "Really?" said the manager, impressed. "It isn't often we—" "Wait a minute. You didn't sell the floor model, did you?" Why, I'm afraid I did, Mr. Follansby. The customer was in such a terrible hurry. Was there any reason—" Mr. Follansby gripped his prominent white forehead in both hands, as though he wished to rip it off. "Haskins, I must have told you, that display regenerator was a Martian model for giving mechanotherapy to Martians." "Oh," Haskins said. He thought for a moment. "Oh." Mr. Follansby stared at his clerk in grim silence. "But does it really matter?" Haskins asked quickly. "Surely the machine won't discriminate. I should think it would treat a homicidal tendency, even if the patient were not a Martian." "The Martian race has never had the slightest tendency towards homicide. A Martian regenerator doesn't even process the concept. Of course the regenerator will treat him. It has to. But what will it treat?" "Oh," said Haskins. "That poor devil must be stopped before— You say he was homicidal? I don't know what will happen. Quick, what is his address?" "Well, Mr. Follansby, he was in such a terrible hurry." The manager gave him a long, unbelieving look. "Get the police! Call the General Motors Security Division! Find him!" Haskins raced for the door. "Wait!" yelled the manager, struggling into a raincoat. "I'm coming too." Elwood Caswell returned to his apartment by taxicopter. He lugged the regenerator into his living room, put it down near the couch, and studied it thoughtfully. "That clerk was right," he said after a while. "It does go with the room." Aesthetically, the regenerator was a success. Caswell admired it for a few more moments, then went into the kitchen and fixed himself a chicken sandwich. He ate slowly, staring fixedly at a point just above and to the left of his kitchen clock. "Damn you, Magnuson, dirty, no-good, lying, shifty-eyed enemy of all that's decent and clean in the world." Taking the revolver from his pocket, he laid it on the table. With a stiffened forefinger, he poked it into different positions. It was time to begin therapy. Except that Caswell realized, worriedly, that he didn't want to lose the desire to kill Magnuson. What would become of him if he lost that urge? His life would lose all purpose, all coherence, all flavor and zest. It would be quite dull, really. Moreover, he had a great and genuine grievance against Magnuson, one he didn't like to think about. Irene! His poor sister, debauched by the subtle and insidious Magnuson, ruined by him and cast aside. What better reason could a man have to take his revolver and— Caswell finally remembered that he did not have a sister. Now was really the time to begin therapy. He went into the living room and found the operating instructions tucked into a ventilation louver of the machine. He opened them and read. To operate all Rex model regenerators. Number 1. Place the regenerator near a comfortable couch. A comfortable couch can be purchased as an additional accessory from any General Motors dealer. Number 2. Plug in the machine. Number 3. Affix the adjustable contact band to the forehead. And that's all. Your regenerator will do the rest. There will be no language bar or dialect problem, since the regenerator communicates by direct sense contact, patent pending. All you must do is cooperate. Try not to feel any embarrassment or shame. Everyone has problems, and many are worse than yours. Your regenerator has no interest in your morals or ethical standards, so don't feel it is judging you. It desires only to aid you in becoming well and happy. As soon as it has collected and processed enough data, your regenerator will begin treatment. You make the sessions as short or as long as you like. You are the boss, and of course you can end a session at any time. That's all there is to it. Simple, isn't it? Now plug in your General Motors regenerator and get sane. Nothing hard about that, Caswell said to himself. He pushed the regenerator closer to the couch and plugged it in. He lifted the headband, started to slip it on, stopped. I feel so silly, he giggled. Abruptly, he closed his mouth and stared pugnaciously at the black and chrome machine. So you think you can make me sane, huh? The regenerator didn't answer. Oh, well, go ahead and try. He slipped the headband over his forehead, crossed his arms on his chest, and leaned back. Nothing happened. Caswell settled himself more comfortably on the couch. He scratched his shoulder and put the headband at a more comfortable angle. Still nothing. His thoughts began to wander. Magnificent, you nosy, overbearing oaf, you disgusting... Good afternoon, a voice murmured in his head. I am your mechanotherapist. Caswell twitched guiltily. Hello, I was just sort of... Of course, the machine said soothingly. Don't we all? I am now scanning the material in your preconsciousness with the intent of synthesis, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment. I find... Yes? Just one moment. The regenerator was silent for several minutes. Then, hesitantly, it said, This is beyond doubt a most unusual case. Really? Caswell asked, pleased. Yes, the coefficients seem... I'm not sure... The machine's robotic voice grew feeble. The pilot light began to flicker and fade. Hey, what's the matter? Confusion, said the machine. Of course, it went on in a stronger voice, the unusual nature of the symptoms need not prove entirely baffling to a competent therapeutic machine. A symptom, no matter how bizarre, is no more than a signpost, an indication of inner difficulty, and all symptoms can be related to the broad mainstream of proven theory. Since the theory is effective, the symptoms must relate. We will proceed on that assumption. Are you sure you know what you're doing? Asked Caswell, feeling lightheaded. The machine snapped back, its pilot light blazing. Mechanotherapy today is an exact science and admits no significant errors. We will proceed with a word association test. Fire away, said Caswell. House, home. Dog, cat. Fleeful? Caswell hesitated, trying to figure out the word. It sounded vaguely Martian, but it might be Venusian or even... Fleeful? The regenerator repeated. Marfouche, Caswell replied, making up the word on the spur of the moment. Loud? Sweet. Green? Mother. Thanagoys? Padamathonga. Arides? Nexothesmodrastica. Chithes nohelgroptices? Rigamaroo laticentric propetria. Caswell shot back. It was a collection of sounds he was particularly proud of. The average man would not have been able to pronounce them. Said the regenerator. The pattern fits. It always does. What pattern? You have, the machine informed him, a classic case of feme desire complicated by strong dwarkish intentions. I do? I thought I was homicidal. That term has no referent, the machine said severely. Therefore, I must reject it as nonsense syllabification. Now consider these points. The feme desire is perfectly normal. Never forget that. But it is usually replaced at an early age by the Hovendish revulsion. Individuals lacking in this basic environmental response. I'm not absolutely sure I know what you're talking about, Caswell confessed. Please, sir, we must establish one thing at once. You are the patient. I am the mechanotherapist. You have brought your troubles to me for treatment, but you cannot expect help unless you cooperate. All right, Caswell said. I'll try. Up to now, he had been bathed in a warm glow of superiority. Everything the machine said had seemed mildly humorous. As a matter of fact, he had felt capable of pointing out a few things wrong with a mechanotherapist. Now that sense of well-being evaporated, as it always did, and Caswell was alone, terribly alone, and lost, a creature of his compulsions, in search of a little peace and contentment. He would undergo anything to find them. Sternly, he reminded himself that he had no right to comment on the mechanotherapist. These machines knew what they were doing, and they had been doing it for a long time. He would cooperate no matter how outlandish the treatment seemed from his layman's viewpoint. But it was obvious, Caswell thought, settling himself grimly on the couch, that mechanotherapy was going to be far more difficult than he had imagined. The search for the missing customer had been brief and useless. He was nowhere to be found on the teeming New York streets, and no one could remember seeing a red-haired, red-eyed little man lugging a black therapeutic machine. It was all too common a sight. In answer to an urgent telephone call, the police came immediately, 4 of them, led by a harassed young lieutenant of detectives named Smith. Smith just had time to ask, "Say, why don't you people put tags on these things?" when there was an interruption. A man pushed his way past the policeman at the door. He was tall and gnarled and ugly, and his eyes were deep-set and bleakly blue. His clothes, unpressed and uncaring, hung on him like corrugated iron. "What do you want?" Lieutenant Smith asked. The ugly man flipped back his lapel, showing a small silver badge beneath. "I'm John Rath, General Motors Security Division." Sorry, sir," Lieutenant Smith said, saluting. "I didn't think you people would move in so fast." Rath made a non-committal noise. "Have you checked for prints, Lieutenant? The customer might have touched some other therapy machine." "I'll get right on it, sir," Smith said. It wasn't often that one of the operatives from GM, GE, or IBM came down to take a personal hand. If a local cop showed he was really clicking, there just might be the possibility of an industrial transfer. Rath turned to Follinsby and Haskins and transfixed them with a gaze as piercing and as impersonal as a radar beam. "Let's have the full story," he said, taking a notebook and pencil from a shapeless pocket. He listened to the tale in ominous silence. Finally, he closed his notebook, thrust it back into his pocket, and said, "The therapeutic machines are a sacred trust. To give a customer the wrong machine is a betrayal of that trust, a violation of the public interest, and a defamation of the company's good reputation." The manager nodded in agreement, glaring at his unhappy clerk. "A Martian model," Rath continued, "should never have been on the floor in the first place." "I can explain that," Follinsby said hastily. "We needed a demonstrator model, and I wrote to the company telling them—" "This might," Rath broke in inexorably, "be considered a case of gross criminal negligence." Both the manager and the clerk exchanged horrified looks. They were thinking of the General Motors Reformatory outside of Detroit, where company offenders passed their days in sullen silence, monotonously drawing microcircuits for pocket television sets. "However, that is out of my jurisdiction," Rath said. He turned his baleful gaze full upon Haskins. "You are certain that the customer never mentioned his name?" "No, sir. Yes, I'm sure," Haskins replied, rattledly. "Did he mention any names at all?" Haskins plunged his face into his hands. He looked up and said eagerly, "Yes, he wanted to kill someone, a friend of his." "Who?" Rath asked, with terrible patience. "The friend's name was, let me think, Magneton. That was it, Magneton. Or was it Morrison? Oh, dear." Mr. Rath's iron face registered a rather corrugated disgust. People were useless as witnesses, worse than useless, since they were frequently misleading. For reliability, give him a robot every time. "Didn't he mention anything significant?" "Let me think," Haskins said, his face twisting into a fit of concentration. Rath waited. Mr. Follinsby cleared his throat. "I was just thinking, Mr. Rath, about that Martian machine. It won't treat a Terran homicidal case as a homicidal, will it?" "Of course not. Homicide is unknown on Mars." "Yes, but what will it do? Might it not reject the entire case as unsuitable? Then the customer would merely return the regenerator with a complaint, and we would—" Mr. Rath shook his head. "The Rex regenerator must treat if it finds evidence of psychosis. By Martian standards, the customer is a very sick man, a psychotic, no matter what is wrong with him." Follinsby removed his pince-nez and polished them rapidly. "What will the machine do, then?" "It will treat him for the Martian illness most analogous to his case. Theme desire, I should imagine, with various complications. As for what will happen once treatment begins, I don't know. I doubt whether anyone knows, since it has never happened before. Offhand, I would say there are 2 major alternatives. The patient may reject the therapy out of hand, in which case he is left with his homicidal mania unabated, or he may accept the Martian therapy and reach a cure." Mr. Follinsby's face brightened. "Ah, a cure is possible." "You don't understand," Rath said. "He may effect a cure of his non-existent Martian psychosis, but to cure something that is not there is, in effect, to erect a gratuitous delusional system. You might say that the machine would work in reverse, producing psychosis instead of removing it." Mr. Follinsby groaned and leaned against a Bell Psychomatica. "The result," Rath summed up, "would be to convince the customer that he was a Martian. A sane Martian, naturally." Haskins suddenly shouted, "I remember! I remember now. He said he worked for the New York Rapid Transit Corporation. I remember distinctly. That's a break, Rath said, reaching for the telephone. Haskins wiped his perspiring face in relief. And I just remembered something else that should make it easier still. What? The customer said he had been an alcoholic at one time. I'm sure of it because he was interested at first in the IBM alcoholic reliever, until I talked him out of it. He had red hair, you know. I've had a theory for some time about red-headedness and alcoholism. It seems... Excellent, Rath said. Alcoholism will be on his records. It narrows the search considerably. As he dialed the NYRT Corporation, the expression on his Craig-like face was almost pleasant. It was good for a change to find that a human could retain some significant facts. But surely you remember your Goricay, the Regenerator was saying. No, Caswell answered wearily. Tell me then about your juvenile experiences with the Therastrian Fleep. Never had any. Blockage, muttered the machine. Resentment, repression. Are you sure you don't remember your Goricay and what it meant to you? The experience is universal. Not for me, Caswell said, swallowing a yawn. He had been undergoing mechanotherapy for close to 4 hours, and it struck him as futile. For a while he had talked voluntarily about his childhood, his mother and father, his older brother, but the Regenerator had asked him to put aside those fantasies. The patient's relationships to an imaginary parent or sibling, it explained, were unworkable and of minor importance psychologically. The important thing was the patient's feelings, both revealed and repressed, toward his Goricay. "Ah, look," Caswell complained, "I don't even know what a Goricay is." "Of course you do. You just won't let yourself know." I don't know. Tell me." "It would be better if you told me." "How can I?" Caswell raged. "I don't know." "What do you imagine a Goricay would be?" A forest fire," Caswell said. "A salt tablet. A jar of denatured alcohol. A small screwdriver. Am I getting warm? A notebook. A revolver." "Those associations are meaningful," the Regenerator assured him. "Your attempt at randomness shows a clearly underlying pattern. Do you begin to recognize it?" "What the hell is a Goricay?" Caswell roared. "The tree that nourished you during infancy and well into puberty. If my theory about you is correct, inadvertently the Goricay stifled your necessary rejection of the feme desire. This in turn gave rise to your present urge to dwark someone in a vlendish manner." "No tree nourished me." "You cannot recall the experience?" "Of course not. It never happened." "You are sure of that?" "Positive." "Not even the tiniest bit of doubt?" No Goricay ever nourished me. Look, I can break off these sessions at any time, right?" "Of course," the Regenerator said, "but it would not be advisable at this moment. You are expressing anger, resentment, fear, by your rigidly summary rejection." "Nuts," said Caswell, and pulled off the headband. The silence was wonderful. Caswell stood up, yawned, stretched, massaged the back of his neck. He stood in front of the humming black machine and gave it a long leer. "You couldn't cure me of a common cold," he told it. Stiffly he walked the length of the living room and returned to the Regenerator. "Lousy fake," he shouted. Caswell went into the kitchen and opened a bottle of beer. His revolver was still on the table, gleaming dully. "Magnuson, you unspeakable, treacherous filth, you fiend incarnate, you inhuman, hideous monster. Someone must destroy you, Magnuson. Someone. He himself would have to do it. Only he knew the bottomless depths of Magnuson's depravity, his viciousness, his disgusting lust for power. Yes, it was his duty, Caswell thought. But strangely, the knowledge brought him no pleasure. After all, Magnuson was his friend. He stood up, ready for action. He tucked the revolver into his right-hand coat pocket and glanced at the kitchen clock. Nearly 6:30. Magnuson would be home now, gulping his dinner, grinning over his plans. This was the perfect time to take him. Caswell strode to the door, opened it, started through, and stopped. A thought had crossed his mind, a thought so tremendously involved, so meaningful, so far-reaching in its implications that he was stirred to his depths. Caswell tried desperately to shake off the knowledge it brought, but the thought, permanently etched upon his memory, would not depart. Under the circumstances, he could do only one thing. He returned to the living room, sat down on the couch, slipped on the headband. The regenerator said, "Yes?" "It's the damnedest thing," Caswell said, "but you know, I think I do remember my Gorake." John Rath contacted the New York Rapid Transit Corporation by televideo and was put into immediate contact with Mr. Bemis, a plump, tanned man with watchful eyes. "Alcoholism," Mr. Bemis repeated, after the problem was explained. Unobtrusively, he turned on his tape recorder. "Among our employees?" Pressing a button beneath his foot, Bemis alerted Transit Security, Publicity, Intercompany Relations, and the Psychoanalysis Division. This done, he looked earnestly at Rath. "Not a chance of it, my dear sir. Just between us, why does General Motors really want to know?" Rath smiled bitterly. He should have anticipated this. NYRT and GM had had their differences in the past. Officially, there was cooperation between the two giant corporations, but for all practical purposes. "The question is in terms of the public interest," Rath said. "Oh, certainly," Mr. Bemis replied, with a subtle smile. Glancing at his tattleboard, he noticed that several company executives had tapped in on his line. This might mean a promotion if handled properly. "The public interest of GM," Mr. Bemis added with polite nastiness. "The insinuation is, I suppose, that drunken conductors are operating our jet buses and helis." "Of course not. I was searching for a single alcoholic predilection and individual latency. There's no possibility of it. We at Rapid Transit do not hire people with even the merest tendency in that direction. And may I suggest, sir, that you clean your own house before making implications about others." And with that, Mr. Bemis broke the connection. No one was going to put anything over on him. "Dead end," Rath said heavily. He turned and shouted, "Smith, did you find any prints?" Lieutenant Smith, his coat off and sleeves rolled up, bounded over. "Nothing usable, sir." Rath's thin lips tightened. It had been close to 7 hours since the customer had taken the Martian machine. There was no telling what harm had been done by now. The customer would be justified in bringing suit against the company. Not that the money mattered much, it was the bad publicity that was to be avoided at all costs. "Beg pardon, sir," Haskins said. Rath ignored him. What next? Rapid Transit was not going to cooperate. Would the armed services make their records available for scansion by somatotype and pigmentation? "Sir," Haskins said again, "what is it?" "I just remembered the customer's friend's name. It was Magnuson." "Are you sure of that?" "Absolutely," Haskins said, with the first confidence he had shown in hours. "I've taken the liberty of looking him up in the telephone book, sir. There's only one Manhattan listing under that name." Rath glowered at him from under shaggy eyebrows. "Haskins, I hope you're not wrong about this. I sincerely hope that." "I do too, sir," Haskins admitted, feeling his knees beginning to shake. "Because if you are," Rath said, "I will... Never mind, let's go." By police escort, they arrived at the address in 15 minutes. It was an ancient brownstone, and Magnuson's name was on a second-floor door. They knocked. The door opened, and a stocky, cropped-headed, shirt-sleeved man in his 30s stood before them. He turned slightly pale at the sight of so many uniforms, but held his ground. "What is this?" he demanded. "You Magnuson?" Lieutenant Smith barked. "Yeah, what's the beef? If it's about my hi-fi playing too loud, I can tell you that old hag downstairs—" "May we come in?" Rath asked. "It's important." Magnuson seemed about to refuse, so Rath pushed past him, followed by Smith, Follinsby, Haskins, and a small army of policemen. Magnuson turned to face them, bewildered, defiant, and more than a little awed. "Mr. Magnuson," Rath said, in the pleasantest voice he could muster, "I hope you'll forgive the intrusion. Let me assure you it is in the public interest as well as your own. Do you know a short, angry-looking, red-haired, red-eyed man?" "Yes," Magnuson said slowly and warily. Haskins let out a sigh of relief. "Would you tell us his name and address?" asked Rath. "I suppose you mean... hold it. What's he done?" "Nothing." "Then what you want him for?" "There's no time for explanations," Rath said. "Believe me, it's in his own best interest, too. What is his name?" Magnuson studied Rath's ugly, honest face, trying to make up his mind. Lieutenant Smith said, "Come on, talk, Magnuson, if you know what's good for you. We want the name, and we want it quick." It was the wrong approach. Magnuson lighted a cigarette, blew smoke in Smith's direction, and inquired, "You got a warrant, buddy?" You bet I have, Smith said, striding forward. I'll warrant you, wise guy. Stop it, Rath ordered. Lieutenant Smith, thank you for your assistance. I won't need you any longer. Smith left sulkily, taking his platoon with him. Rath said, I apologize for Smith's overeagerness. You had better hear the problem. Briefly but fully, he told the story of the customer and the Martian therapeutic machine. When he was finished, Magnuson looked more suspicious than ever. You say he wants to kill me? Definitely. That's a lie. I don't know what your name is, mister, but you'll never make me believe that. Elwood's my best friend. We've been best friends since we was kids. We've been in service together. Elwood would cut off his arm for me, and I would do the same for him. Yes, yes, Rath said impatiently. In a sane frame of mind he would. But your friend Elwood, is that his first name or last? First, Magnuson said tauntingly. Your friend Elwood is psychotic. You don't know him. That guy loves me like a brother. Look, what's Elwood really done? Defaulted on some payments or something? I can help out. You thick-headed imbecile, Rath shouted. I'm trying to save your life and the life and sanity of your friend. But how do I know? Magnuson pleaded. You guys come busting in here. You can trust me, Rath said. Magnuson studied Rath's face and nodded sourly. His name's Elwood Caswell. He lives just down the block at number 341. The man who came to the door was short, with red hair and red-rimmed eyes. His right hand was thrust into his coat pocket. He seemed very calm. Are you Elwood Caswell? Rath asked. The Elwood Caswell who bought a regenerator early this afternoon at the home therapy appliances store? Yes, said Caswell. Won't you come in? Inside Caswell's small living room, they saw the regenerator, glistening black and chrome, standing near the couch. It was unplugged. Have you used it? Rath asked anxiously. Yes. Fallonsby stepped forward. Mr. Caswell, I don't know how to explain this, but we made a terrible mistake. The regenerator you took was a Martian model for giving therapy to Martians. I know, said Caswell. You do? Of course, it became pretty obvious after a while. It was a dangerous situation, Rath said, especially for a man with your, troubles. He studied Caswell covertly. The man seemed fine, but appearances were frequently deceiving, especially with psychotics. Caswell had been homicidal. There was no reason why he should not still be. And Rath began to wish he had not dismissed Smith and his policemen so summarily. Sometimes an armed squad was a comforting thing to have around. Caswell walked across the room to the therapeutic machine. One hand was still in his jacket pocket. The other he laid affectionately upon the regenerator. The poor thing tried its best, he said. Of course, it couldn't cure what wasn't there, he laughed. But it came very near succeeding. Rath studied Caswell's face and said in a trained, casual tone, Glad there was no harm, sir. The company will, of course, reimburse you for your lost time and for your mental anguish. Naturally, Caswell said. And we will substitute a proper Terran regenerator at once. That won't be necessary. It won't? No. Caswell's voice was decisive. The machine's attempt at therapy forced me into a complete self-appraisal. There was a moment of absolute insight during which I was able to evaluate and discard my homicidal intentions toward poor Magnuson. Rath nodded dubiously. You feel no such urge now? Not in the slightest. Rath frowned deeply, started to say something and stopped. He turned to Fallonsby and Haskins. Get that machine out of here. I'll have a few things to say to you at the store. The manager and the clerk lifted the regenerator and left. Rath took a deep breath. Mr. Caswell, I would strongly advise that you accept a new regenerator from the company gratis. Unless a cure is effected in a proper mechanotherapeutic manner, there is always the danger of a setback. No danger with me, Caswell said, airily but with deep conviction. Thank you for your consideration, sir, and good nights. Rath shrugged and walked to the door. Wait, Caswell called. Rath turned. Caswell had taken his hand out of his pocket. In it was a revolver. Rath felt sweat trickle down his arms. He calculated the distance between himself and Caswell. Too far. Here, Caswell said, extending the revolver butt first. I won't need this any longer. Rath managed to keep his face expressionless as he accepted the revolver and stuck it into a shapeless pocket. Good night, Caswell said. He closed the door behind Rath and bolted it. At last he was alone. Caswell walked into the kitchen. He opened a bottle of beer, took a deep swallow, and sat down at the kitchen table. He stared fixedly at the point just above and to the left of the clock. He had to form his plans now. There was no time to lose. Magnuson, that inhuman monster who cut down the Caswell, Goricke. Magnuson, that man who even now was secretly planning to infect New York with the abhorrent fiend desire. Oh, Magnuson, I wish you a long, long life filled with the torture I can inflict on you. And to start with, Caswell smiled to himself as he planned exactly how he would dwark Magnuson in a vlendish manner. The end.
In just a moment, X-1. But first, after a hard day's work, there's nothing more welcome than an evening of variety entertainment. That's just the tonic provided tomorrow night by NBC Radio. You'll laugh your cares away when good-natured contestants carry out the rib-tickling stunts dreamed up by MC Jack Bailey on NBC's Truth or Consequences. Later on, Groucho Marx peps things up with lots of spontaneous good fun and more of the friendly insults at which he is so accomplished. For a brighter, livelier evening tomorrow night, it's Groucho Marx and Truth or Consequences on this station. Now stay tuned for X-1 on NBC.
Countdown for blast off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire. From the far horizons of the unknown come transcribed tales of new dimensions in time and space. These are stories of the future, adventures in which you'll live in a million, could be years, on 1,000 maybe worlds. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, presents
X minus 1.
Tonight, Bad Medicine by Finn O'Donovan. But first, farmers know they can't stop storms, floods, or droughts from ruining a crop. But they can make sure things like that can't ruin them by investing in United States savings bonds. Not only farmers, but over 40 million Americans in all sorts of jobs own 40 billions of savings bonds. And why? Because savings bonds are the easy way to start saving and to keep saving. And the money you invest in savings bonds mean protection now and ready cash when you need it in the future. Improving the farm, sending the youngsters to college, or planning your own retirement. These are the big things you can be ready for with savings bonds. And besides offering you a safe investment, each Series E savings bond pays you back $4 at maturity for every 3 you invest. Yes, you earn extra dollars while you save, so start saving now. For the big things in your life, be ready with United States savings bonds. And now, on with our story.
On May 2nd, 2103, Elwood Caswell walked rapidly down Broadway. It was a gentle, misty spring day, and the air held the smell of rain and blossoming trees. But Elwood Caswell didn't smell the rain and the trees. He just gripped the loaded gun he had in his pocket. He didn't want to use the weapon, but he was certain that he would. This was justifiable. You see, Elwood Caswell was a homicidal maniac.
Why shouldn't I kill him?
Hey, look out, will you?
Oh, sorry, sir. Only the other day he said to me, Elwood, you're looking very well. What business is it of his how I look?
Hey there, Elwood. Elwood.
Huh?
It's me, Marty Klein. I work on the jet buses with you, remember?
Oh, yeah, of course. Hello, Marty. Forgive me, my mind was on other things.
Yeah, I know how it is. A couple of weeks ago, I was walking around in a fog so thick you could cut it.
Yeah, really?
Sure, preoccupied, you know. I had this idea in my mind.
You too?
Yeah.
The same person?
Huh?
Were you troubled by the same person?
My wife. Hey, you okay?
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course.
Well, I had this idea, see? I was going to get rid of my wife.
Kill her?
Kill her? I mean, send her to a country for a week.
Oh.
You sure you ain't sick?
No, I never felt better.
Well, anyway, I was going to take a week off. Quit the jet buses. Hey, can you imagine? I've been a jet bus operator for 10 years now, and all of a sudden, I feel like I can't take it for another minute.
I know how you feel.
And I was going to take a trip all by myself.
A trip?
To where? To the farthest place I could think, to Mars. I was just going to pick up and take a vacation on Mars. Silly, huh?
I don't know. What happened?
Well, I talked it over with Ethel.
Your wife?
Yeah. Ethel, she's a real sensible girl. You know what she did?
No, am I supposed to?
Well, Ethel went right down to that home therapy appliance store, and she says, "You got a home therapy machine that'll cure my husband of this idea he can't stay on the jet buses?"
I've heard that those machines aren't perfected.
They got him licked now. So, okay, she describes the trouble, and next day they deliver this thing, and boom, I plug it in, see?
And?
And a voice talks to me. It starts asking me questions.
Yeah, what kind of questions?
All kinds. Things I wouldn't even tell my own mother.
You told the machine?
Why not? It's only a machine.
Yeah, I see your point.
Well, then the machine starts to tell me a few things. And before I knew it, inside a week, I'm cured. Now, I can't wait to go back driving the jet buses.
You don't say.
So that's why I say I know how it is to have one thing on your mind all the time like that.
This machine, what did it cost you?
That's the beauty part of it. My Ethel. Boy, she's a smart girl. After a week, she sends it back, see? She says it don't work. So all we lose is the deposit.
I see.
Well, I gotta get back to work now. Hey, ain't you working the jet buses today?
Huh? No, I'm off today.
Well, I'll see you, Elwood.
Yeah, see you, Marty. What was the name of that place?
Where they sell the home therapy machines.
Yeah.
Home therapy appliances. It's right down Broadway, about 2 blocks from here. So long, Elwood.
Perspiring freely, Elwood Caswell continued down Broadway toward 43rd Street. His friend Magnuson would be finishing work soon, returning to his apartment less than a block from Caswell's. Elwood gripped the gun tighter. How pleasant it would be to saunter in, exchange a word with him, and then...
No, I won't do it. I don't really want to kill anybody. It isn't right. Think what'll happen. The authorities will lock me up. My friends won't understand, and... Mother would never approve. Still, if I see Magnuson, if I see his hateful, accusing face in front of me... Oh, this must be the store. Yeah. Home therapy appliances.
Good afternoon, sir. Can I show you some of our home therapy appliances?
I want therapy. Quick.
Of course, sir. This way, please. Now then, this is our new alcoholic reliever built by International Combustion Motors and advertised in leading magazines. A handsome piece of furniture. I think you will agree, and not out of place in any home. It also opens into a television set.
Look, what I need...
Therapy, of course. I just want to point out this model need never cause embarrassment to you, your friends, or your loved ones. Notice, if you will, the recessed dial which controls the desired degree of alcoholism. You see, heavy, moderate, social, light, and teetotal. A new feature unique in mechanotherapy.
I'm not alcoholic. The New York Jet Bus Authority does not hire alcoholics.
Oh, sorry. You seem the type. No offense.
Please.
You seem rather nervous. Perhaps the portable anxiety reducer.
No.
Well, sir, perhaps if you told me just what you feel is bothering you.
What have you got for homicidal mania?
I beg your pardon.
Homicide? The urge to kill someone.
Oh, of course. Well, let's see now.
Pardon me. Have you worked here very long?
A week. Oh, yes, here's the ticket. This black job with the chrome trim.
What is it?
This, sir, is a Rex regenerator, built by Planetary Motors Corporation. Handsome, Goes with any decor, opens into a well-stocked little bar, so your family, friends, loved ones need never...
Will it cure homicidal urge, a strong one?
Oh, absolutely. Don't confuse this with the little 10-amp Neurosis model. This is a hefty, heavy-duty 25-amp machine for really deep-rooted conditions.
That's what I've got.
Well, this baby will jolt you out of it. Big, heavy-duty thrust bearings, oversized heat absorbers, completely insulated. Sensitivity range
I'll
over...
take it.
Yes, sir.
With me, right now.
Now?
Before it's too late. I'll pay cash.
Well, yes, sir. It'll be a few hours before the warehouse can...
I'll take this one here.
Well, that's a floor demonstrator.
Does it work?
All of our demonstrators work, sir.
Then I'll take it. I can't wait for a warehouse. I can't wait for anything. Have it put in a taxi for me.
Yes, sir.
Tell him to hurry. I want to kill my friend Magnuson, you know.
Who?
My friend, Magnuson.
Oh, of course. That'll be $400.59, sales tax included.
After Elwood Caswell left the store, the clerk, whose name was Haskins, smiled to himself and lighted a cigarette. He had made his first sale. He inhaled.
Haskins?
Yes, Mr. Follansby?
Smoking. I asked you to rid yourself of that filthy habit.
Immediately, Mr. Follansby. I'll use one of the display model denicotinizers at once. By the way, I just made a rather good sale, sir.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir. One of our big Rex regenerators.
Well, now, it isn't often we... Wait a minute. Where's the floor model?
Well, sir, the customer was in an awful hurry. He was going to kill his friend.
You gave him the floor model?
Yes, sir. Was there any reason why...
Oh, grief, Haskins. Didn't I inform you we never sell a floor model?
But, sir...
Good heavens, I've got to get to him. What was his address?
Address?
His name, then.
Well, he didn't say.
Then his check.
But he paid cash.
You mean you just let him pick up the machine and walk out?
Well, sir, he paid cash.
He was homicidal, you say?
Yes, sir. His friend...
I don't care about his friend. Get the police. No. Call the Planetary Motor Security Division. Quick.
Yes, at once.
Well...
Excuse me, Mr. Follansby. What will I tell them?
Tell them, you fool. Tell them that one of our customers accidentally got that display regenerator they sent us. The one they shipped by accident. They were going to replace it tomorrow.
Yes, sir. The one they shipped by accident. Will they know?
If they don't be more explicit, tell them we've sold the Martian model. The one for treating psychotic Martians.
Meanwhile, Elwood Caswell had returned to his apartment and lugged the big black Rex regenerator into his living room. He put it down near the couch and studied it carefully.
He was right. It does go with the room. Now then, let's see those instructions. Place regenerator near a comfortable couch. All right. Plug in machine. There. Affix contact band to your forehead. That's all there is to it. Just turn on the machine and it will do the rest. There will be no language problem since your regenerator communicates with you by direct sensory contact, patent pending. Well, that seems easy enough. Now, I'll just put the contact on my head and blast it. Hello?
Elwood?
Yes?
This is Henry. Henry Magnuson. How are you, old boy?
I'm fine.
I wondered if you were doing anything tonight. Thought you might like to drop over for a game of chess.
Game of chess, huh? You stupid oaf.
What?
Nothing.
I thought you called me a stupid oaf.
Just talking to my cat.
Oh, I didn't remember you had a cat. I thought you hated cats.
Oh, I do. This isn't really mine. It's a neighbor's. It keeps coming in.
Oh. What about tonight?
Will you be alone?
Well, yeah.
You haven't mentioned to anyone that you're inviting me over?
Not a soul. Why?
Someone's looking for me, a process server.
Oh.
Now, I've been avoiding him for days. I don't even leave word where I'll be when I go out.
You can trust me, Elwood. I'm your best friend.
Yes, you are. But not for long.
Huh?
Just talking to the cat again.
Oh. Well, will you be over?
Yeah.
In about an hour, okay?
Yeah, an hour will be fine. There are a few things I have to do
I just
first.
gotten some new laugh records from the boys at the office. I got something here that'll really kill you. So long, Elwood.
So long. I've got something here that'll kill you, too.
X-1 will continue in 1 minute.
Each of us has a personal reason for wanting to see cancer conquered. Steve Allen would like to tell you his.
I have a wife and 3 wonderful kids. And when I
think about cancer going to strike one American in every 4, well, that's more than enough reason for wanting to see it conquered. I know that some people don't even want to think about cancer, but pretending it's not a threat, doing an ostrich routine, isn't going to get us anywhere. We've got to stand up to it and fight. We can fight, each and every one of us. Through the American Cancer Society, we can be part of the battle that someday will beat cancer once and for all. That day will come, but you and I have got to help. How about it?
Thank you, Steve Allen. Remember, fight cancer with a checkup and a check. See your doctor once a year for a checkup. It's your best cancer insurance. And to help conquer cancer, send a check to your unit of the American Cancer Society. Make it generous.
And now, on with our story.
Taking the revolver from his pocket, Elwood laid it on the table in front of him. His face became suffused with hatred at the thought of Magnuson. He poked at the gun with a stiff forefinger.
Magnuson, you no-good, shifty-eyed enemy of all that's decent in the world. The man who ruined my sister Irene. The man who... Wait a minute, Elwood. You have no sister, remember? No sister. Now, before you go off and commit murder, why not just try that machine just once, huh? Turn it on. Okay, now reach over and...
Good afternoon, Elwood. I am your mechanical therapist. You may call me Gloop.
Gloop?
You seem surprised. It is a perfectly common name here on this planet.
Gloop, of course. I've heard it many times.
Now then, I am scanning the material in your preconscious with the intent of synthesis, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment.
Yes?
I find... This is a most unusual case.
Really? I thought it was simple homicidal mania.
There is, of course, no such thing. You are obviously hallucinating a set of symptoms, nonsense syllables to enable you to avoid the real problem.
Oh?
A most unusual set of symptoms, I must say.
Your pilot light seems to be fading.
My light is not fading. I am merely trying to relate your symptoms to proven theory.
Well, as long as you know what you're doing.
Mechanotherapy is an exact science, Elwood. It admits of no significant errors. We will proceed.
Good.
First, the word association test.
Fire away.
I will proceed to give a word. You answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Ready?
Ready.
House.
Home.
Planet.
Earth.
Just musing. Now, Fleeful.
Fleeful?
Fleeful.
That sounds like a Martian word.
Just give me a response.
Fleeful, Okay. I can make them up, too. Marfouche. That's a pretty good one, huh? Made it up in the spur of the moment.
Marfouche is very significant. It is a corruption of the Martian concept of fush klib. Very significant.
I don't know any Martian words.
Aha, noteworthy. We will proceed. Loud.
Soft.
Green.
Mother.
Thanagoyas.
Pathamathanga. How's that one?
Arides.
Nexothesmodrustica. Top that.
Katith a snowhell gnoptices.
Okay. Rigamaroo, Kalamazoo, Iggity Bibbity Boo.
Good. It fits the pattern.
Pattern?
Your neurosis. I can diagnose it now.
Go on.
You have a classic case of theme desire, complicated by strong dwarkish intentions.
I could have sworn I was homicidal.
The term has no referent. It must be rejected as nonsense. Now, if you'll just settle back on the couch, we'll proceed.
At precisely this moment, a tall, gnarled, ugly man pushed his way through the doors of home therapy appliances. His clothing, unpressed and uncaring, hung on him like corrugated iron. When the clerk, Hoskins, approached him, he flipped back his lapel to show a small silver badge underneath.
Sir?
John Rath, Planetary Motor Security Division.
Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Follinsby, Mr. Follinsby.
Yes, sir. Hello, Follinsby.
Mr. Rath,
Well?
So far we haven't a single lead.
You're certain he never mentioned his name?
Oh, yes, sir.
Now think. Is there anything significant?
Is it serious, Mr. Rath?
Mr. Follinsby, this man is homicidal.
Won't it treat him?
Homicide is unknown on Mars. It'll treat him for the most likely Martian sickness.
What would that be?
Theme desire, Mr. Follinsby.
Theme desire?
It's a Martian illness in which the victim feels cursed by the tree-like nourishing parent, although, of course, Martians don't have parents in the ordinary sense. Well, Haskins?
I remember one thing. He mentioned he was a jet bus operator for the New York Jet Bus Authority.
Ah.
One other thing.
Yes?
I believe, yes, he was alcoholic.
An alcoholic jet bus operator. Excellent. It'll be on his records. Get the jet bus authority at once.
But surely, Elwood, you remember your Gorisy.
No.
Tell me then about your juvenile experiences with the Thorestrian fleet.
Never had one.
Complete blockage.
My father...
There is no such thing, of course.
But...
I thought we'd finally agreed on that.
Okay, if you say so.
Now then, since you claim you don't even know what a Gorisy is, tell me what you imagine it to be.
A forest fire. A salt tablet? A small screwdriver? Am I getting warm? A revolver? What the heck is a Gorisy?
Why, the tree that nourished you into puberty.
No tree nourished me.
You have completely repressed the experience.
No tree ever nourished me.
Mr. Caswell, let me try to explain your case as best I can. Somewhere in your childhood, your Gorisy, or parent tree, stifled your theme desire. Now, this gave rise to your present urge to dwark someone in a Flendish manner.
To what?
To dwark someone in a Flendish manner.
Listen, you crummy piece of hardware. I have never had a Gorisy. I have no desire to dwark someone in a Flendish manner or any other manner. All I want to do is put a bullet into Herbert Magnuson. Understand? All I want to do is kill Magnuson.
Lie down, Mr. Caswell. We'll go over it again.
My dear man, I'm not trying to insinuate that the Jet Bus Authority hires alcoholics. If you will just...
Any luck?
It's a dead end. Now, Haskins.
Yes, sir.
A man's life may be at stake here. Now think. Was there anything else this fellow said to you? Anything?
Well, he did mention the name of his friend.
Of which friend?
The one he was going to kill.
The one he... Why didn't you say so? Now, what was it?
Magnuson.
You sure?
That's it. He said, I'm going to kill Magnuson. You know, just casually like that.
Follinsby, see if there's a Magnuson in the Manhattan phone book. Now, hurry it up.
Yes, Mr. Caswell, you were saying?
Well...
Something about your Gorisy?
Yes, I was saying I think perhaps you're right.
Naturally. But right about what, Mr. Caswell?
Well, I think perhaps... Yes, I think perhaps I do remember my Gorisy.
Ah! Now, Mr. Caswell, we're on the road to a cure.
Mr. Magnuson?
Yes?
Do you know a short, angry-looking, red-haired man?
I might.
Thank heaven.
Or I might not.
Can you tell us where to locate him?
You're a process server, huh?
Certainly not.
Don't kid me.
Mr. Magnuson, this man is trying to kill you.
Go on, you're full of happy pills. Elwood's my best friend.
Elwood?
He loves me like a brother. And if you think I'm going to stick some process server onto
Mr.
him...
Magnuson, I'm not a process server. Your friend Elwood is a psychopathic killer. You're his intended victim. Can you get that through your thick skull? I'm trying to save your life.
Yes?
You're Elwood Caswell?
Yes?
The Elwood Caswell who bought a Rex regenerator early this afternoon?
Yes. Won't you come in?
Thank you. My name is Rath, Planetary Motors.
Nice to meet you.
Have you used the machine?
Oh, yes.
I see. Mr. Caswell, I don't know how to explain this, but we made a terrible mistake. The regenerator you took was a Martian model for giving therapy to Martians.
I know.
You do?
Yes, it became pretty obvious after a while.
Well, it was a dangerous situation, especially for a man in your condition.
Yes, the poor thing tried its best, but of course it couldn't cure what wasn't there.
Well, then the company will, of course, reimburse you for your lost time and your Well, your mental anguish.
Naturally.
And we will substitute a regular human-type regenerator.
Oh, that won't be necessary. You see...
Mr. Caswell, will you put down that gun? I warn you.
I'm not going to shoot you. I merely want to turn this gun over to you.
You do?
Yes, I'm not going to shoot anybody.
You mean that...
The machine's attempt at therapy forced me to reappraise my whole self. There was an insight during which I was able to get rid of my obsession.
You no longer want to kill your friend Magnuson?
Kill Magnuson? Why, I haven't the faintest urge.
Well, I must say, then, that it worked out for the best. I'll get back to the store and have him pick up this machine in an hour, and... Oh, well, sir...
don't forget to take this gun. I won't need it.
Of course. Well, nice to have met you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Did you hear that? He asked me if I still intended to kill Magnuson. Magnuson, that inhuman monster who cut down my Goracy. Magnuson, the man who even now is secretly planning to infect New York with abhorrent fiend desire. Am I going to kill him? Oh, no. I wish him a long life, a life filled with the torture I can now inflict on him. Kill Magnuson? Oh, no. I'm going to start right now to work him in a vlendish manner.
You have just heard X-1, presented by the National Broadcasting Company in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, which this month features Honorable Opponent by Clifford D. Simak, the story of an Earth general with the distasteful assignment of meeting a delegation of unmilitary clowns who arrive as conquerors. Galaxy Magazine, on your newsstand today. In a moment, tonight's cast and a preview of next week's exciting drama.
They took the blue from the skies and the pretty girl's eyes and the touch of old glory's view, and gave it to the men who proudly wear the U.S. Air Force blue. The U.S. Air Force blue. Oh, we are men with a dream on America's team. We're a rugged and ready crew. And you can bet your boots the world looks up to U.S. Air Force Blue. To U.S. Air Force Blue. We know where we're going. We set our course. The sky's no limit in the Air Force. They took the blue from the skies and the pretty girl's eyes and the touch of old glory's hue, and gave it to the men who proudly wear the U.S. Air Force blue. We proudly wear the blue, the U.S. Air Force blue.
Tonight, by transcription, X-1 has brought you Bad Medicine, a story from the pages of Galaxy written by Finn O'Donovan and adapted for radio by George Lefferts. Featured in the cast were Cliff Carpenter, Bill Britton, Alan Manson, Charles Webster, Carl Weber, and Joseph Julian. Norman Rose was heard as the machine. Your announcer, Fred Collins. X-1 was directed by Bob Maurer and is an NBC Radio Network production.
Weekday, the companion and advisor to America's women, offers a new informative series on childbirth. It's the actual case history of a young wife, following her through the late stages of pregnancy, childbirth, and postnatal care. You'll attend the childbirth courses offered at New York's Mount Sinai Hospital, and even enter the delivery room for the actual birth of the child. Listen tomorrow for the real-life series, The Story of Birth. Then, on the same program, listeners can also enjoy more women's specialties. Kitchen Hints by Charlotte Adams, Child Care News with Dr. Francis Horwich, Vacation Ideas offered by Walter Kiernan, and another personal visit with your radio friend, Mary Margaret McBride. Don't forget the exciting dramatization each day from Taylor Caldwell's book, Tender Victory. Be sure to join Virginia Graham and Mike Wallace tomorrow on this NBC station. Follow the news with Chet Huntley tonight on NBC Radio.
Warm by Robert Sheckley. Anders lay on his bed, fully dressed except for his shoes and black bow tie, contemplating, with a certain uneasiness, the evening before him. In 20 minutes, he would pick up Judy at her apartment, and that was the uneasy part of it. He had realized only seconds ago that he was in love with her. Well, he'd tell her. The evening would be memorable. He would propose, there would be kisses, and the seal of acceptance would, figuratively speaking, be stamped across his forehead. Not too pleasant an outlook, he decided. It really would be much more comfortable not to be in love. What had done it? A look? A touch? A thought? It didn't take much, he knew, and stretched out his arms for a thorough yawn. "Help me," a voice said. His muscles spasmed, cutting off the yawn in mid-moment. He sat upright on the bed, then grinned and lay back again. "You must help me," the voice insisted. Anders sat up, reached for a polished shoe and fitted it on, giving his full attention to the tying of the laces. "Can you hear me?" the voice asked. "You can, can't you?" That did it. "Yes, I can hear you," Anders said, still in a high good humor. "Don't tell me you're my guilty subconscious, attacking me for a childhood trauma I never bothered to resolve. I suppose you want me to join a monastery." "I don't know what you're talking about," the voice said. "I'm no one's subconscious. I'm me. Will you help me?" Anders believed in voices as much as anyone. That is, he didn't believe in them at all until he heard them. Swiftly he catalogued the possibilities. Schizophrenia was the best answer, of course, and one in which his colleagues would concur. But Anders had a lamentable confidence in his own sanity. In which case, "Who are you?" he asked. "I don't know," the voice answered. Anders realized that the voice was speaking within his own mind. Very suspicious. "You don't know who you are," Anders stated. "Very well. Where are you?" "I don't know that either." The voice paused and went on. "Look, I know how ridiculous this must sound. Believe me, I'm in some sort of limbo. I don't know how I got here or who I am, but I want desperately to get out. Will you help me?" Still fighting the idea of a voice speaking within his mind, Anders knew that his next decision was vital. He had to accept, or reject, his own sanity. He accepted it. "All right," Anders said, lacing the other shoe. "I'll grant that you're a person in trouble, and that you're in some sort of telepathic contact with me. Is there anything else you can tell me?" "I'm afraid not," the voice said with infinite sadness. "You'll have to find out yourself." "Can you contact anyone else?" "No." "Then how can you talk with me?" "I don't know." Anders walked to his bureau mirror and adjusted his black bow tie, whistling softly under his breath. Having just discovered that he was in love, he wasn't going to let a little thing like a voice in his mind disturb him. "I really don't see how I can be of any help," Anders said, brushing a bit of lint from his jacket. "You don't know where you are, and there don't seem to be any distinguishing landmarks. How am I to find you?" He turned and looked around the room to see if he had forgotten anything. "I'll know when you're close," the voice said. "You were warm just then." Just then? All he had done was look around the room. He did so again, turning his head. The room, from one angle, slowly. Then it happened. It all looked different. It was suddenly a mixture of muddled colors, instead of the carefully blended pastel shades he had selected. The lines of wall, floor, and ceiling were strangely off proportion, zigzag, unrelated. Then, Everything went back to normal. "You were very warm," the voice said. "It's a question of seeing things correctly." Anders resisted the urge to scratch his head, for fear of disarranging his carefully combed hair. What he had seen wasn't so strange. Everyone sees one or two things in his life that make him doubt his normality, doubt sanity, doubt his very existence. For a moment, the orderly universe is disarranged, and the fabric of belief is ripped. But the moment passes. Anders remembered once, as a boy, awakening in his room in the middle of the night. How strange everything had looked. Chairs, table, all out of proportion, swollen in the dark. The ceiling pressing down, as in a dream. But that had also passed. "Well, old man," he said, "if I get warm again, let me know." "I will," the voice in his head whispered. "I'm sure you'll find me." "I'm glad you're so sure," Anders said gaily, switched off the lights, and left. Lovely and smiling, Judy greeted him at the door. Looking at her, Anders sensed her knowledge of the moment. Had she felt the change in him, or predicted it? Or was love making him grin like an idiot? "Would you like a before-party drink?" she asked. He nodded, and she led him across the room to the improbable green and yellow couch. Sitting down, Anders decided he would tell her when she came back with the drink. No use putting off the fatal moment. A lemming in love, he told himself. "You're getting warm again," the voice said. He had almost forgotten his invisible friend, or fiend as the case could well be. What would Judy say if she knew he was hearing voices? Little things like that, he reminded himself, often break up the best of romances. "Here," she said, handing him a drink. Still smiling, he noticed. The number 2 smile. To a prospective suitor, provocative and understanding. It had been preceded, in their relationship, by the number 1 nice girl smile, the don't misunderstand me smile, to be worn on all occasions, until the correct words had been mumbled. "That's right," the voice said. "It's in how you look at things." Look at what? Anders glanced at Judy, annoyed at his thoughts. If he was going to play the lover, let him play it. Even through the astigmatic haze of love, he was able to appreciate her blue-gray eyes, her fine skin, if one overlooked a tiny blemish on the left temple. Her lips, slightly reshaped by lipstick. "How did your classes go today?" she asked. Well, of course she'd ask that, Anders thought. Love is marking time. "All right," he said. "Teaching psychology to young apes. Oh, come on." "Warmer," the voice said. What's the matter with me? Anders wondered. She really is a lovely girl. The gestalt that is Judy, a pattern of thoughts, expressions, movements, making up the girl I what? Love? Anders shifted his long body uncertainly on the couch. He didn't quite understand how this train of thought had begun. It annoyed him. The analytical young instructor was better off in the classroom. Couldn't science wait until 9-10 in the morning? "I was thinking about you today," Judy said, and Anders knew that she had sensed the change in his mood. "Do you see?" the voice asked him. "You're getting much better at it." I don't see anything, Anders thought, but the voice was right. It was as though he had a clear line of inspection into Judy's mind. Her feelings were nakedly apparent to him, as meaningless as his room had been in that flash of undistorted thought. "I really was thinking about you," she repeated. "Now look," the voice said. Anders, watching the expressions on Judy's face, felt the strangeness descend on him. He was back in the nighttime perception of that moment in his room. This time, it was as though he were watching a machine in a laboratory. The object of this operation was the evocation and preservation of a particular mood. The machine goes through a searching process, invoking trains of ideas to achieve the desired end. "Oh, were you?" he asked, amazed at his new perspective. Yes. I was wondering what you were doing at noon, the reactive machine opposite him on the couch said, expanding its shapely chest slightly. Good, the voice said, commending him for his perception. Dreaming of you, of course, he said to the flesh-clad skeleton behind the total Gestalt Judy. The flesh machine rearranged its limbs, widened its mouth to denote pleasure. The mechanism searched through a complex of fears, hopes, worries, through half-remembrances of analogous situations, analogous solutions. And this was what he loved. Anders saw too clearly and hated himself for seeing. Through his new nightmare perception, the absurdity of the entire room struck him. Were you really? The articulating skeleton asked him. You're coming closer, the voice whispered. To what? The personality? There was no such thing. There was no true cohesion, no depth, nothing except a web of surface reactions stretched across automatic, visceral movements. He was coming closer to the truth. Sure, he said sourly. The machine stirred, searching for a response. Anders felt a quick tremor of fear at the sheer alien quality of his viewpoint. His sense of formalism had been sloughed off, his agreed-upon reactions bypassed. What would be revealed next? He was seeing clearly, he realized, as perhaps no man had ever seen before. It was an oddly exhilarating thought. But could he still return to normality? Can I get you a drink? The reaction machine asked. At that moment, Anders was as thoroughly out of love as a man could be. Viewing one's intended as a depersonalized, sexless piece of machinery is not especially conducive to love, but it is quite stimulating, intellectually. Anders didn't want normality. A curtain was being raised, and he wanted to see behind it. What was it some Russian scientist, Alpensky, wasn't it, had said? Think in other categories. That was what he was doing, and would continue to do. Goodbye, he said suddenly. The machine watched him, open-mouthed, as he walked out the door. Delayed circuit reactions kept it silent until it heard the elevator door close. You were very warm in there, the voice within his head whispered once he was on the street. But you still don't understand everything. Tell me then, Anders said, marveling a little at his equanimity. In an hour, he had bridged the gap to a completely different viewpoint. Yet it seemed perfectly natural. I can't, the voice said. You must find it yourself. Well, let's see now, Anders began. He looked around at the masses of masonry, the convention of streets cutting through the architectural piles. Human life, he said, is a series of conventions. When you look at a girl, you're supposed to see a pattern, not the underlying formlessness. That's true, the voice agreed, but with a shade of doubt. Basically, there is no form. Man produces gestalts and cuts form out of the plethora of nothingness. It's like looking at a set of lines and saying that they represent a figure. We look at a mass of material, extract it from the background, and say it's a man. But in truth, there is no such thing. There are only the humanizing features that we, myopically, attach to it. Matter is conjoined, a matter of viewpoint. You're not seeing it now, said the voice. Damn it, Anders said. He was certain that he was on the track of something big, perhaps something ultimate. Everyone's had the experience. At some time in his life, everyone looks at a familiar object and can't make any sense out of it. Momentarily, the gestalt fails, but the true moment of sight passes. The mind reverts to the superimposed pattern. Normalcy continues. The voice was silent. Anders walked on through the Gestalt city. There's something else, isn't there? Anders asked, Yes. What could that be? He asked himself. Through clearing eyes, Anders looked at the formality he had called his world. He wondered momentarily if he would have come to this if the voice hadn't guided him. Yes, he decided after a few moments, it was inevitable. But who was the voice? And what had he left out? Let's see what a party looks like now, he said to the voice. The party was a masquerade. The guests were all wearing their faces. To Anders, their motives, individually and collectively, were painfully apparent. Then his vision began to clear further. He saw that the people weren't truly individual. They were discontinuous lumps of flesh, sharing a common vocabulary, yet not even truly discontinuous. The lumps of flesh were part of the decoration of the room, and almost indistinguishable from it. They were one with the lights, which lent their tiny vision. They were joined to the sounds they made, a few feeble tones out of the great possibility of sound. They blended into the walls. The kaleidoscopic view came so fast that Anders had trouble sorting his new impressions. He knew now that these people existed only as patterns, on the same basis as the sounds they made and the things they thought they saw. Gestalts, sifted out of the vast, unbearable real world. "Where's Judy?" a discontinuous lump of flesh asked him. This particular lump possessed enough nervous mannerisms to convince the other lumps of his reality. He wore a loud tie as further evidence. "She's sick," Anders said. The flesh quivered into an instant sympathy. Lines of formal mirth shifted to formal woe. "Hope it isn't anything serious," the vocal flesh remarked. "You're warmer," the voice said to Anders. Anders looked at the object in front of him. "She hasn't long to live," he stated. The flesh quivered. Stomach and intestines contracted in sympathetic fear. Eyes distended. Mouth quivered. The loud tie remained the same. "My God, you don't mean it!" "What are you?" Anders asked quietly. "What do you mean?" the indignant flesh attached to the tie demanded. Serene within its reality, it gaped at Anders. Its mouth twitched, undeniable proof that it was real and sufficient. "You're drunk," it sneered. Anders laughed and left the party. "There is still something you don't know," the voice said. "But you were hot. I could feel you near me." "What are you?" Anders asked again. "I don't know," the voice admitted. "I am a person. I am trapped." "So are we all," Anders said. He walked on asphalt, surrounded by heaps of concrete, silicates, aluminum, and iron alloys. Shapeless, meaningless heaps that made up the Gestalt city. And then there were the imaginary lines of demarcation dividing city from city, the artificial boundaries of water and land. All ridiculous. "Give me a dime for some coffee, mister?" something asked, a thing indistinguishable from any other thing. "Old Bishop Berkeley would give you a non-existent dime to your non-existent presence," Anders said gaily. "I'm really in a bad way," the voice whined, and Anders perceived that it was no more than a series of modulated vibrations. "Yes, go on," the voice commanded. "If you could spare me a quarter," the vibrations said, with a deep pretense at meaning. No, what was there behind the senseless patterns? Flesh, mass. What was that? All made up of atoms. "I'm really hungry," the intricately arranged atoms muttered. All atoms, conjoined. There were no true separations between atom and atom. Flesh was stone, stone was light. Anders looked at the masses of atoms that were pretending to solidity, meaning, and reason. "Can't you help me?" a clump of atoms asked, but the clump was identical with all the other atoms. Once you ignored the superimposed patterns, you could see the atoms were random, scattered. "I don't believe in you," Anders said. The pile of atoms was gone. "Yes!" the voice cried. "Yes!" "I don't believe in any of it," Anders said. After all, what was an atom? "Go on!" the voice shouted. "You're hot! Go on!" What was an atom? An empty space surrounded by an empty space. Absurd! "Then it's all false," Anders said. And he was alone under the stars. "That's right!" the voice within his head screamed. "Nothing!" But stars, Anders thought. How can one believe? The stars disappeared. Anders was in a gray nothingness, a void. There was nothing around him except shapeless gray. Where was the voice? Gone. Anders perceived the delusion behind the grayness. And then there was nothing at all. Complete nothingness. And himself within it. Where was he? What did it mean? Anders' mind tried to add it up. Impossible. That couldn't be true. Again, the score was tabulated, but Anders' mind couldn't accept the total. In desperation, the overloaded mind erased the figures, eradicated the knowledge, erased itself. Where am I? In nothingness. Alone. Trapped. Who am I? A voice. The voice of Anders searched the nothingness, shouted, "Is anyone here?" No answer. But there was someone. All directions were the same, yet moving along one, he could make contact with someone. The voice of Anders reached back to someone who could save him, perhaps. "Save me," the voice said to Anders, lying fully dressed on his bed, except for his shoes and black bow tie.